Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome to the Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose podcast. Today, my guest is Stephany Ann. Stephany Ann is an attorney and recipient of the Governor's Award for Advocacy with Survivors of Domestic Violence who triumphed over narcissistic abuse. With 2 marriages to narcissists behind her, she's harnessed the transformative power of emotional freedom technique, or EFT, to guide others on their path to healing and personal growth. Welcome, Stephany, to the podcast. I'm so glad you could be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Brenda. It is a real honor to sit here and have this conversation with you today.
Well, and I'm excited to dive deep with you. I know we've talked before about how we love to do that. But before we do that, I do have some really fun and uplifting rapid fire questions so that our audience can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready to do those?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, fantastic. All right, number 1 is what makes you laugh?
What makes me laugh? Watching my boys play and tickle and just love on each other.
That's such a great answer. I have so many memories of my children, and I will still look back at them and just bust a gut because it's still funny. Like, it never is not funny, you know?
Right.
Okay, number 2. What is something on your bucket list and why?
Ooh, okay. So right now on our bucket list is going to Portugal. I
Really?
have been to over 50 countries and have traveled, but I haven't traveled internationally with my children. And so we are studying Portuguese right now, and we are going to go for a couple months.
Ooh, that sounds fantastic. Why did you choose to study Portuguese?
So it wasn't me. I have 3 boys, 11, 9, and a 2-year-old, and they love Cristiano Ronaldo. We are a big soccer family. And so I told them, where do you want to go? They said, Portugal. I said, the Mediterranean and 10 fish, because, I like sardines. So, and wine. So why not? Let's go.
That's
So
fantastic.
it was their idea. It was their idea to study Portuguese to go there. So we all signed up on Duolingo, and every day we have lessons and we talk in Portuguese now. And
Oh my goodness, I love that. That actually is close to my heart. I speak Portuguese because I
no
lived
way.
I do. So very little now. It's been a long time, but I lived for over a year in Brazil, and they speak Portuguese there.
Well,
So yeah,
yes.
but it's interesting when you're in Brazil, they say, do you speak Brazilian?
Hmm.
Because it's a little bit different, similar to like England and Australia and the United States. They have, their
Yes.
different vernacular and stuff like that. So anyway, it's really fun. So that's really cool. I love that.
Yeah, very cool. Yes.
Yeah, I think Portuguese is a beautiful language. And I studied not Spanish, but I studied French in high school. And then when I learned Portuguese, and I had grew up with so much Spanish influence, I really felt like Portuguese was a pretty good mix of French and Spanish. So it's super fun.
It definitely is. That's very
Yeah,
cool.
it is cool. All right, last one is, what is your favorite silly quote?
Oh, my favorite silly quote. Mm. You know, I don't know if it's a silly quote, but I always loved this quote. I think it's by Waldo or Emerson, but it's don't follow your own path. Um, don't follow the path that everyone else follows, but make your own path and leave a trail for others to follow. That's kind of been a life quote.
And
So
have you
I don't know
followed
if
that in your life?
I have. I have always taken the different route, the different path, even if it was harder. Um, just a little trailblazer.
Well,
So
that makes fun challenging at times because I've tried to do the same thing. But yeah, that it makes all the difference in the world. So let's take a deeper dive into that then. Thank you so much for sharing those. That was really fun. A big part of your story, as I've mentioned in your bio, is twice being married to a narcissist. So what led you down that path and how did you get out of those relationships? Because I know those can be very, very difficult.
Yeah. So, I actually found myself at my sister's house just laying on the cold floor tile, tears streaming down my face, saying, "Why me? I didn't do anything wrong. Like, why me, God? I'm a good person. I don't deserve this." Yet, in that moment, I couldn't see past all the pain and suffering that it engulfed my life. And so it took over 17 years, multiple life disasters, and I even lost my eyesight to prompt this big shift, this big change in my life. And I really felt in that moment I wasn't seeing my story through the right lens. I wasn't um, the hero of my story. I was stuck in this victim mindset for so long within these two marriages, and I needed to make a change. And when I decided to let go of that victim story that kept me stuck, I was able to see the lessons. I was able to see what needed to be healed, what needed to be released, what needed to be let go, and take my power back. So, we I really needed to let go of that why me and find the for me in our story. And so, although, I spent all these 17 years, my first husband was a covert narcissist. I spent 14 years with him. And then when I met my second husband, I manifested him, and he ended up being a narcissist as well. And that marriage ended very tragically and with a lot of violence. But it's like I look back on all of this, and for so long I held on to that victim mindset, and for so long I looked at these two men as monsters who were destroying my life and out to destroy me. But when I was able to make that shift in my mindset and see them as teachers who are here to teach me very powerful, painful, tear-filled lessons, I could get that wisdom. I could see them as teachers, and I could ultimately heal and move on with my life.
That's a really powerful mindset shift. I'd like to dissect. You've said a lot of things that I'm really curious about. So, number one, after having lived with a narcissist for 17 years, what was it that attracted you to the second one? And how basically, I don't want to offend you by saying this, but how were you not able to see that he was a narcissist? Now, don't get me wrong, I understand narcissists are very, very good at hiding their narcissism. But were there any clues that gave you any red flags in that second marriage?
Yeah. So, let's start at the beginning. Like, what is narcissism? So we all remember from Latin and Greek mythology. I don't know, I had to study it in middle school. Narcissism was about this man who fell in love with his own reflection, and he basically never left the pool of just staring at his reflection. And so, a narcissist is someone who has this grandiose sense of self-importance. They have a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited power, wealth, beauty, whatever it is. They have this belief that they are so special and so entitled that they will exploit and manipulate and use whomever to get what they want. They're so arrogant. They feel that they're so envious of everyone, and they feel that everyone is envious of them. It's a disordered personality, is what it is. And so, within my marriages, I did not know I was with a narcissist, and most people don't. You know that there is something wrong, but it's very hard to label what it is exactly. So, my background before I married my first husband, my background was in domestic violence. So, I worked with women and men because this does happen to men as well. They also find themselves in these narcissistic, abusive relationships. Um, and so, what happens though is that narcissistic abuse doesn't always look like traditional domestic violence. It doesn't always fit the traditional domestic violence cycle. There are a lot of similarities because it's all about abuse and control. But back in the day when I was working in domestic violence, it wasn't. It was always really focused on the physical violence, not necessarily the emotional and psychological. When you're with the narcissist, it tends to be more emotional and psychological until they can't control you those ways, then it could become physical. So what happens for the cycle of narcissistic abuse, there's the first stage is the idealization stage, then there's the devaluation stage, and then there's the discard. So in the beginning, yes, you don't know. I did not know that both of my husbands were narcissists until later on when I had left them and discovered all of this. So what happens in the idealization phase is they essentially mirror you. So everything, all my hobbies, all my passions, all my interests, that just so happen to be theirs as well. I love that you're a lawyer, Stephany. I love that you are a strong, independent woman. I love that all your girlfriends are strong, independent women. I love that you speak your mind and you're authentic and you speak your truth. I love that you are such a good mother. I love your relationship with your children and how you parent. I, you are my soulmate. These are words, that the narcissist says. You are my soulmate. You are God's gift to me. I have been praying for you and asking the universe for you, and here you are. It's everything you want to hear, they tell you. So you open up, you become completely vulnerable. You share with them your secrets, you share with them your insecurities. My second husband knew that my first husband cheated on me for 14 years. And he told me that his wife cheated on him for 14 years. We had this bond. Later found out that all this stuff was not true. Nothing was true. But at that moment, you don't know. We don't know. And so they get you to completely open up and become vulnerable to them. So then they have you hooked. Right? I fell in love with my second husband before I ever met him. We met online. I didn't want to meet. He lived 3 hours away. Let's just talk and really get to know each other. I thought I was doing everything right, protecting my kids and having a relationship that's not a physical relationship, but really getting to know someone. So in that sense, it's very hard to see those red flags.
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
seems
see him
very
around
flattering
his,
and comforting.
oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, here's someone who completely understands you, who gets you. So then what happens once they have you hooked, once they get you, to fall in love with them, then they move to the devaluation stage. So in the devaluation stage, it is everything that they projected and mirrored onto you, they change. They hate all my friends. They hates my profession, hates what I do. I'm a horrible parent. So it's like they take everything because you've opened up and you showed them everything because you thought you could trust this person, and they use everything against you. So, for instance, he knew that one of my insecurities was other women. I wasn't completely healed through 14 years of being cheated on. So then he would start saying things like, I was at the grocery store and I met this group of women. They invited me over to their house. They're having a party, a hot tub party. I think I'm going to go.
Oh my goodness.
This is what they do. That's called triangulation. But he knew that that was a way to hurt me because when they know all your secrets and insecurities and vulnerabilities, they know how to take you down. And so this is the devaluation phase where they do that. And then once they see that they have brought you down, they have manipulated you, they've hurt you. It might go on for a couple of days. It might be one day. It might be a week. It might be a month. They'll come in and love bomb you back to them. They don't say, I'm sorry. They don't apologize. They just pretend like it didn't happen. And so then they love bomb you back. They put you back up on that pedestal. They throw all the compliments back at you. And then you just get stuck in this cycle of intermittent reinforcement because it's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad. And you never know when it's going to be bad. And when it's bad, it can be really bad. When it's good, it can be really good. And so you're stuck in this, this cognitive dissonance, what it is with all this intermittent reinforcement. And that forms a trauma bond. And so if you've ever heard people talk about narcissism and a trauma bond, this is how the trauma bond forms. And so this is what makes these relationships so challenging to break away from because we have this trauma bond.
Can you explain what a trauma bond is?
Yep. So the trauma bond, like I said, is when you have all this intermittent reinforcement. So you have the good, the bad, the good, the bad, and it keeps you bonded with this person. I'm sure many people have heard of Stockholm syndrome, where the kidnapper and the victim, they have this bond. It is very similar because it's the good and the bad together. And so I always explain the trauma bond like an addiction, like a drug addiction. So think about when a drug addict uses a drug for the very first time. They have this very, very high level of dopamine release. It's way up here. So then they use again because they want that high, right? But every time you use again, your dopamine level drops. And so you never make it to that first original high. But you keep using, thinking that, oh, if I keep using, or if I switch it up, or if I take more, if I do this, I will achieve that first high again. Similarly, with a trauma bond, it becomes an addiction. We are addicted to the good times because they are so great. And so it keeps you hooked through the bad times because you're like, wait a second, they know how to love me. They know how to treat me right. They know how to be kind. And so we wait for that. And so it is an addiction that keeps you in the cycle until you either have had enough and you're done and you leave, or you get discarded because they have used you up and you are not worth anything else to them. And that is the cycle and the reality of being with someone with a disordered personality, because that's what it is. It's a disordered personality. And so many of us who find ourselves in these relationships, I wasn't looking to be with a narcissist. I didn't know I was with one. And so many people don't know. We know that something is not right, that something is off, that these people have this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality. I used to write that all the time in my journal. Like, I don't know what's going on because it didn't fit the traditional cycle of domestic violence that I was familiar with and used to. And so when you're in it, and then they make you feel like you're the one that something is wrong with. I try to go sign us up for therapy. I try to do all these things. Like, what do I need to change within me to get him back to where he was in the beginning? What did I do wrong?
Thinking it's all your fault.
Exactly, because they tell you.
Right.
Well, you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have reacted that way. You shouldn't have done this. But the whole time they are provoking and tormenting and trying to get our emotional reaction because that is how they control you. Because if you look at it again, similarly with domestic violence, it's all about power and control. It's these angry, abusive, disordered personalities that need power and control. And if you're not giving them what they want, the excessive admiration, all the attention, all of your time, everything, then they will manipulate, they will gaslight, which gaslighting is when someone tries to alter your perception of reality. So you could say, I was in an argument last night, and this morning in a healthy relationship, it's like, okay, when we were talking, you made me feel this way. Let's talk about it. When you're with a disordered personality like narcissism, they will turn everything around. Why are you so sensitive? You're overly sensitive. Oh, you're taking everything so personally. Oh, you can't handle sarcasm. Oh, you must be on your period again. Like everything to transfer attention away from them. And then it makes you feel like you are going crazy. That's gaslighting. I started keeping a journal so that I could check my sanity and make sure, like, no, that's not what happened. And so these are some of the difficulties when you're in these relationships and why it is so hard to leave. Because again, if they were always horrible to you, of course we would all leave, right?
Right. And you'd leave on the onset of that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. No one wants to be treated that way. No one deserves that. But it is all that is the whole bang of, the cognitive dissonance, the trauma bond. And so many people ask me also, like, are they aware? Do they know what they are doing? Because I also have had so many friends say, oh, your ex-husband, he's so crazy. He's such a psychopath. He's all these things. No, he's not. He is cool, calm, and calculated. He knows exactly what he is doing. Now, on some sort of subconscious level, they have behaviors that they do subconsciously, but overall, they are consciously aware of what they are doing.
So interesting. So you talked about the 3 different phases, but I don't think we talked about the third one. Can you go over that one? You're good.
Yeah. So the discard phase is the last. So what happens is you either come to a point in your life where you have had enough. I am done with this. I'm not going to live in this cycle with this person. And so you then either walk away and you discard them, or they no longer can manipulate and control and they discard you. So what happened for my first marriage, he was a cheater, and this was hard too, because so many of us, how many people do you know, we say, oh, he's a cheater. Abuse is over here, right? Cheating's over here. It's the same. It's emotional and psychological abuse. But for so long, I had them separate, just as so many of us keep them separate. So when he left for another married woman, that was a discard. So he did something that I could not do. I was still stuck in let me keep changing me, let me work on me, let me focus on my kids. We came from more of a religious background. You don't get a divorce. You work everything out. You stay. So he did what I couldn't do. Mm-hmm. My second husband, I could see the discard coming. He went into this narcissistic rage, which is, think of like a almost 6'4" man going on a toddler temper tantrum for 3 weeks, slamming doors, screaming, punching walls. It was the scariest thing that I've ever been through. And it was during that time because I had stopped giving him a reaction. I had stopped reacting. So even when he would try to triangulate me, oh, I'm getting all these girls' phone number. I would say, great, you're a good looking guy. Go. If you want to, go.
You
And
forced
so,
it to come to a head.
yeah, because I had had enough and I stopped reacting. And so he could no longer manipulate and control me. And so if they can no longer manipulate and control you, then what's the point of having you around? And so his narcissistic rage was the buildup to discarding me. And it was during that time that I said I had had enough. I was done. And so that's how the relationships end. They end in a discord. And you don't get closure. You don't get your questions answered. I mean, I've talked to hundreds of people, we all have the same story. It's like they all play from the same playbook. There's no closure. And then you move on to post-separation abuse. It never ends.
But is the solution just not reacting? Is that really the only thing that you can do, or are there other things that you can do when you're stuck in a relationship like this?
Well, if you are aware that you are in this relationship, then you have to make the choice. It's you have to choose you and you have to make the choice to leave that and know that you are worthy of something better. But again, it's very challenging because of that trauma bond. And so is that the only way? That's one of the ways that they will discard you. Once the mask starts to come off, once they know they can no longer control you, because it's all about power and control. So you can't control someone, whether it's through all the manipulations, through all these things, the emotional, the psychological control, they will move to physical violence. And so they will discard you because they cannot control you. My hope is that people learn this now. And if you see that you are experiencing similar things in your relationship, wake up, be aware. They are not going to change. They have a disordered personality. Less than 0.001% of people with a disordered personality will actually do the hard work to heal and become whole again. They won't change. I was separated with my second husband for many months. And he loved wanting me back. I've changed. I'll go to rehab. I'll do all this stuff. I've changed. Go back. They're great for another 3 months because it's like the whole idealization phase starts all over again. But people can only pretend for so long, right? And I see this happen with so many men and women. It's like you keep going back. You keep thinking they'll change. They will not change. We cannot change them, but we can change ourselves. We can work on ourselves. We can put ourselves first. We can do the hard work. We can heal and we can move on and have freedom.
So I'm wondering, how does it start with the narcissist? I mean, not like how they treat other people, but because you've explained that very well, thank you. But how does one become a narcissist? Is it, I can't believe that you're born that. So is it like their own poor upbringing, or, like where does that even start?
Well, for one, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, so I can't, speak to all of that. I can only
Right.
speak from my firsthand experience and from what I've
Totally fair. Yeah.
learned. And so, what is interesting about that, my first husband, his father is a psychiatrist,
Oh, that's really interesting.
a PhD and an MD, so he's an honored fellow. Like when my when Josh, my first husband, who was Josh, when he discarded me, he tried to get his parents to discard me. His parents are very smart.
So they could see
They
the
said
narcissism in him.
they could see, yeah, And so they said, no, we love Stephany. She is like our daughter. She is the mother of our grandchildren. We also love you, Josh, but we are not going to get rid of Stephany. So he actually disowned his parents. And it has been a very sad couple of years. And he actually committed suicide just a couple months ago. And that's how sad and um, just sad. But he chose to do all that. His parents did not get rid of me. I'm still very close to them. They are like my second parents. And so when people say, oh, you must have the narcissist or the victim, you guys both must have come from trauma, drama, and chaos. You both must have come from these dysfunctional families. No, my family, I learned healthy relationships. My parents are still married. My parents are still wonderful. His parents are wonderful. They've been married for over 55 years. They have a beautiful relationship and friendship that they have modeled. So, how did he become who he was? I don't know. I do know in childhood he was diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder. And so, sometimes when that is one of the disordered childhood personalities that can turn into a disordered personality as an adult. He always, yeah, so I don't know. And then I had to go back and look at myself too, because again, we have all these myths out there that we all come from these traumatized backgrounds. I did not. But when I started studying and learning about all this, I did find that in my family, narcissism runs in my family. So my grandfathers on my mother's side were narcissists. So what does that mean? That is a generational trauma. And generational trauma is passed down through, the DNA. Does that so that would make me predisposed, I suppose, you could say predisposed to attract that. Although we can turn these genes off and on and all this, that's a whole nother
Totally different
conversation.
Thing. Yep.
Whole nother conversation.
Yep.
But it's been really fascinating to learn all of this because how many of us come from very strong, good, familiar backgrounds, yet we still find ourselves in these relationships. I didn't go out searching for a narcissist, but I do know that when I manifested husband number 2, because I did, how many of us write out that list? I want this, I want this, I want that. I made the list. And I threw it out to the universe. I met him a week later. He checked everything off my list. So when he's saying that he manifested me and that I'm his soulmate, how could I not believe that? He checked off every
so
list.
Hard.
And so I always say, the universe, the divine, God, and all the infinite wisdom will give you what you want with all the unhealed lessons that you didn't learn the first time. And until we learn those lessons and break those patterns, whether it's the generational trauma patterns or just the patterns from previous relationships and within ourselves, we will continue to repeat and call in the same things until we are completely healed and free.
So how have you done that then? Yeah, how have you
I have
broken
I
those?
have
Yeah, I mean, because
yes so
you come forward as somebody who's very confident in, where you stand and in how you live your life. And
yes
so what have you done to, and I'm sure that's been hard work. So tell me
it's
what that
very hard
process has
work.
been like.
Yeah. So in 2020, I was, the why me's and stuff, and I found EFT. So EFT is emotional freedom techniques. It is one of many wonderful healing modalities. I thought I was signing up to work with a practitioner. I signed up actually to become a practitioner. So,
Oops.
again, the divine knows what we need. I thought
Right.
I was going to a few therapy sessions.
Right.
I was now the therapist, which was, it's you have to have so many hundreds of hours, to become a practitioner.
Well, wait, once you
And
figured out that you were in, a certification course,
I
right?
stayed
You stayed though. So like what in your mind, like what were you thinking there? Like why would you stay?
because I was desperately searching for something, and this was presented to me. And
Okay.
once I started doing it, it just, wow, I just had so much trauma and things that I needed to work through. And this was a wonderful tool. And I just did hours and hours and out tapping every day for days, weeks, months, and now years. And, I just had a lot to work through. And so, what better place than to be in a certificate program?
Where you actually
Because
have to do
now
more,
i
right?
have i have 20 people in my cohort, and we have to tap every day with each other. And so every day we're jumping on calls, we're tapping, we're working through stuff, all this stuff's coming up. So I didn't just have one uh, practitioner that I was going through. I had 20 women who were my practitioners, who I got to vomit my stuff and they got to do it to me. And I
Hmm.
got to learn all of this. And so what I just started working through everything, doing the hard work. And, EFT is, for anyone who doesn't know, you tap on the meridian points. The first round is really acknowledging the trauma that's coming up, whatever it is, whatever feelings are coming up, and where in the body it's held. So we hold our trauma in the body until it is released. And so, for instance, you could have all this anxiety. Well, in the beginning, anxiety is good because it is your body's way of telling you that something is wrong, that you are unsafe. Well, now you are safe and you do not need the anxiety, but the anxiety doesn't know that. The anxiety is still in your body and it will come up and tell you that you are unsafe, even though you are safe. And so we really have to sit down and spend time with these big, heavy emotions and traumas that are coming up. We have to acknowledge them. We have to get it all out. And then we have to release it from our body. So the next couple rounds is really releasing it, letting it go. I no longer need you. Thank you for helping me when I needed it, but you can go now. And so releasing it. And something that I did, and I haven't even heard of anyone else doing this. And I don't know why I was doing it. I see now. So I would release all these traumas and all these big emotions down to the cellular level of my body. So I'm letting it go from my cells, from down into, like, even the smallest microscopic, like the microbiology level. I would release this trauma. Well, fast forward to now when I'm learning about all this generational trauma that's passed down through the DNA, that's passed through the cells, that is in your bone marrow. I started releasing all that generational trauma and breaking those patterns when I was releasing it completely from my body. And so for me, EFT has just been a very powerful uh, tool to rewire and reprogram as well. So not only are we releasing all the trauma from the body, we're rewiring the brain. So when you are in these toxic relationships, especially toxic relationships with a disordered personality like narcissism, our brain gets programmed a certain way. It's the trauma bond. It's the all the manipulation, all the gaslighting. It is the criticisms, the belittlings, the all of that. It has wired your brain. And so this is another reason why breaking up with a disordered personality is so much more challenging and so much more hard work because you need to reprogram your brain. In a normal, healthy breakup, you go your own ways and you can throw out the time heals. Time will probably heal. Time will not heal these relationships. I have talked to so many people 5, 6, 7 years later, they are still in the same place. They are no longer with their abuser, but they have not been able to heal and move on. Everyone says, oh, just pray, just time will heal. No, it will not.
Yeah,
The
it takes
hard
work.
work, it
Hmm.
takes work, and you have to do the hard work. You
So
have to reprogram your mind.
yeah, so I'm curious because I've done EFT. I've done it for 20 years. Um,
Oh,
and so I'm very, very familiar with it. And I'm curious what like I've never heard, like you've said, I've never heard of anybody say I do it on a cellular level. So what were the words that you used to do that?
yeah. So, when you're in the releasing round, I would say, all all of this it will just say the anxiety.
Right.
So all of this anxiety I'm feeling in my body, I'm feeling all the way down, completely in my body. I'm choosing to let you go. I'm releasing you from my thoughts. I'm releasing you from my mind. I'm releasing you from my cells, every single cell down to, and I started, I was pre-med for my first 2 years until I went into law. So I would start like calling out all these, like the anatomy. I'm releasing you from
Interesting.
my organs. I'm releasing you from, um, yeah, like even down to the smallest like mitochondria or, whatever. I
Yeah.
just start speaking my anatomy and releasing it.
And could you tell? I mean, I know, change like that typically takes time, to heal. Could you tell a difference pretty quickly when
Oh,
you started doing it like that?
oh, absolutely. And I've been doing it for um 3 years now. And I, yeah, I feel like I could have been a more of a shell of a person or all this stuff, but because I've had these tools, I've just, I don't know. I just have put in the, I mean, I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of work on myself, because I don't want to hold the trauma in my body. I don't want to pass on generational traumas to my children. I do not want to be in another relationship with a disordered personality. I don't want any of that. I want to be healthy, healed, and whole. And it's really through all this, letting the trauma go from your body because trauma stays in the body, but it's also the reprogramming of our mind.
Mm-hmm.
We have to reprogram our mind, and that is through repetition. And that is why I love EFT, because it's repetition. You can't just go and have one session. I had one session, it didn't work. Well,
Right.
no, it takes multiple sessions because it's the repetition. It was through repetition that I got put in your mind. It's through repetition that it needs to come out of your mind. And so, it's just so powerful. And then I take it even a step further, not just going down to my cellular level and my getting it out of all my organs and all that stuff, but I do a third round of tapping into the person I want to become. So this is like the affirmation rounds. And so I would always, even if I didn't believe it, we can tell our mind to do things and we might not believe it yet. But once it gets down into the subconscious mind, it becomes more believable. So I would say, I am, I can get through this. I can do hard things. I can do hard work. I am strong. I'm stronger. I'm confident. I am brave. I am, you know, whatever. I used to spend a lot of time tapping into the divine feminine. I am the Empress energy. I am the queen. I am the divine feminine. I am all these things. And so it's just taking whatever affirmations or whomever you want to become, tap into that, leave with that. So after we've released, let's fill. We release so we can receive. So let's receive what we need. I want to be all those things. Or do I feel like I'm all those things? No. So sometimes I would say I'm becoming empress. I am becoming the queen. I am embracing the queen's energy. I don't feel it yet, but I know I am moving towards that.
That's beautiful. It's interesting. I had I said that I've been doing EFT for 20 years, and I got into it myself because my oldest daughter was just plagued with anxiety, and it was just so, so difficult. And I was just looking for anything that I could find to help my daughter. I mean, my daughter was 3 and 4 and 5, and she was little, but still just racked with this anxiety. And what's interesting is I could tell after doing rounds with her, I could physically see a change in her. And
Yeah.
and so I very quickly gained my own testimonial of, the efficacy of tapping. And what's interesting that for me, I have found that it even works better when I'm walking. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
so and I'll be doing this, and all of a sudden it just when I'm doing like the reprogramming part, all of a sudden it's like this isn't true. Like it just changes so quickly. And
It,
but you're right, it takes repetition, and it takes because there are layers to trauma, layer upon layer
mhm.
upon, and so you are ripping away one layer at a time. And so and I agree, people think, oh, it doesn't work, but you just have to keep going. So my question, and we're almost out of time, but I'm really curious about this. What is like the one of the biggest things you learned about yourself through doing EFT?
Oh, through EFT, I have learned that we all have the tools, we all have the ability to heal ourselves and to grow. Sometimes we just need to be pointed to the right tools, but we can do it. We were meant to do it, to invigorate, or what's the word I'm looking for? Just
Reprogram.
reignite, reprogram.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, like
Yeah.
we can do all of that. You don't need to go outside to do all of that, but it does take hard work. You have to be persistent, you have to be dedicated, you have to want it so badly that you will do the hard work to do it. But you can, and that you are worthy of it. And I always like to say worthy over deserving, because deserving means you did something to get something back.
Right.
Worthy, you are worthy because it is who you are. It is innate within you. And so that's what I always tell people. I'm like, you are worthy. And when you see that you are worthy, you won't put up with being in relationships with abusive people. You won't put up with it because you put yourself first, because know that you are worthy of being treated right. You are worthy of a healthy relationship. You are worthy of healing and having true freedom and finding that empowerment.
That's beautiful. And I agree. Everybody is worthy of healing because they are human, period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have any other words of wisdom or any golden nuggets that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, for so long I was stuck in the victim consciousness and of all these bad things happening to me. And I could not see the good or the opportunities or the for me in any of this because I was so stuck on why me. And I see that with so many people out there. They're like, well, I don't see the lessons. I didn't do anything wrong. Because that was me for 17 years. I didn't do anything wrong, except for married two wrong people. But until I shifted my perspective and chose to stop living in a victim mindset and in the background of my life, and I put myself as the star of my life, then I could see the lessons. And until you see the lessons, you don't know exactly what needs to be healed. You don't know what needs to be released or let go. And you will continue these patterns of calling people in. Well, why is it every time I meet a guy, it's a disordered personality? Why am I getting all these abusive men? Well, because you're not learning the lessons. Sit down, take the time for yourself because you are worthy of it. Heal. Become the star of your story.
Wonderful. Now that you have done and you continue to do this work, how do you feel about your future?
Oh, my future is exciting. I am excited. Every day is just a new day with new opportunities and new blessings. And it's for boys, and we get to do whatever we want.
I
We're
love it.
living life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask that question because, our topic today is kind of heavy. And for those who are going through it, it is heavy. And so I just wanted our listeners to see that healing is possible and excitement for the future is possible. And you have just been a wonderful example of that. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us and sharing some really wonderful tools of how to have self-healing. And EFT can be used for anything.
Mhm.
And it's
It is.
so I'm so glad that you brought that up and you have found your own journey of healing through that. So if somebody wants to connect with you, Stephany, how can they reach you?
Well, right now you could reach me at stephanyannSpeaks@gmail.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook. I've given you those. I have not moved over to any other platforms yet. I'm still working on the website, but those are the places where I'm at right now.
Wonderful. And I will make sure I have those links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Stephany, for joining us today. I have really appreciated you taking a deeper dive into what can be a really dark subject, but one that is where, that has hope, thank you. That's so if you are somebody who, who is dealing with something like this, or you are yourself, look into emotional freedom technique tapping because it is a wonderful tool to use to heal. So, and remember that your purpose can be found in your story. Until next time, take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your light glow, being you is the greatest way to grow.